Hey, everybody, welcome to another Thursday night quarantine panel on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. Tonight, we are talking about, tonight is a tribute to David Bowie. This is one of the things one of the panels that we've hoped to do or thought about doing for years in live action at the con, and now here we are. It's not necessarily a fitting with our Christmas theme for this month, but who the heck cares? We'll call this a palate cleanser. And of course, Bowie did one of the, I would say, most famous Christmas songs with Bing Crosby, but we'll get into all that. And first, I want to go around the horn and introduce everybody that's here tonight. First of all, one internet to my left. He's been on panels with us before in live action, but this is your first quarantine panel. Mr. Rob Levy, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I just want to say these are great, and that I don't know if you know this or not, but you are doing a huge service to a lot of people by doing this. I just want to say,
so.
as not as a panelist, but just as somebody who's watching them, sometimes in real time and sometimes it really is great. So I just wanted to say that. Hi.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gosh, what?
You can stay on the panel.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I mean, I think right now anything great like that deviates and gets us into, and we learn stuff,
Yeah, and we this way we don't have to wait 11 and a half months in between doing these things. I mean,
Yeah.
I absolutely love seeing you people every single week now. And maybe y'all might be sick of us, but we're not sick of you yet. So let's see. 2 internets away from me. You've been in live action with us a time or two, I think. Tom Morris, how are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me on here. Good time, man. Just finished on our podcast doing Labyrinth a few weeks ago. So,
Yeah. There's tons of stuff that we could talk about, and we will talk about. And 3 internets away from me, my unindicted co-conspirator, Mr. Gary Mitchell. How are you, sir?
I am well, everybody. As anyone who's watched these before can tell, I have rearranged my room. I got an actual computer desk now.
Nice.
And I also have LED light bulbs. Which I can control remotely. So keep an eye out.
I am on fire with jealousy.
That is pretty cool.
That is super neat. And 5th, around 1, 2, 3, 4 internets away from me.
Because Joe can't count.
Ta-da! Alabama Public Education. 4, thank you, like the horseman. Welcome back. Beth Van Dusen, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am excited to be here. I'm excited for all of you guys to be here. And so I guess let's start off with it to everybody talk about maybe your first encounter with Bowie and his movies or music or both. We'll start with Rob, since you're the first timer tonight. Just tell us.
So my first encounter with Bowie is kind of through, when I grew up, I grew up in a house where my dad had his old jazz and swing records, and my brother, in the 70s had his soul R&B. And then I remember being in a car and hearing, there's 2 distinctive things I remember hearing. I remember hearing Planet Claire by the B-52s, and I remember hearing Heroes and Ashes to Ashes, very young, right? Probably maybe between 8 and 12. And then, like millions of other people in my generation, the Let's Dance album broke. I mean, I was aware of Bowie. I knew who he was, but I didn't know any of the back catalog stuff. And so then Let's Dance broke, and then Live Aid, and then Labyrinth. There we go. That's kind of my, and we were off to the races after that.
Yeah. Tom.
Okay, so I was born in '79, so a little past some of the glory years for Bowie. But so I think my first official exposure was Labyrinth, And then for music, it really was probably the remix of Fame that was in Pretty Woman. And I really didn't get into Bowie until probably about 95 because I was big into Nine Inch Nails and Nirvana, and they were both like always saying Bowie was the man. And I already heard Nirvana's cover of Man Who Sold the World, so I was starting to get a little more curious. And time I got into college, and which I think is an important time for anyone to really get deep dive into Bowie's college.
Yeah.
So I started like going through all of his greatest hits, and then I started like deep diving into albums. So, basically like the mid 90s is when I really became a Bowie fanatic.
And Gary.
The first time I remember seeing Bowie and realizing what he was is I was a weird kid. Surprise. I loved Bing Crosby as a kid because I saw the Crosby and Hope movies.
Oh, sure.
On TV. So I counted myself as a Bing Crosby fan. And I remember when The Little Drummer Boy came out and I was like, who's this guy singing with Bing? And and then just from there, like I said, then like Rob was saying, and Ashes to Ashes comes out. I discovered Major Tom and just pretty much was on board from there. And it's like, it's hard to remember a time where I wasn't a Bowie fan.
Yeah. Agreed. Beth.
Bowie was obviously a very well-established artist by the time I was old enough to know who the heck I was listening to. So if you can't tell by my friend here and my other friend here, Labyrinth was really the first time I became aware of who he was as a person. I obviously didn't see The Hunger until a little bit later than that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
My parents were permissive, not that permissive. But being a big Muppets fan, my mom took me to see Labyrinth, and I think I was 11 or 12 at the time, and it's just the right age to start to wonder what's going on in those magic pants.
The area.
I wanted to interject here for a second and let everybody know that the background artwork, we had it as a poster in live action in our track room, and it is by an Atlanta artist named Belligerent Monkey. So go to his website. I'll post a link in the show notes. But what I like
is where we can see it, Joe.
See, okay, I'm gonna let's see
if you can.
Oh no, that's too much of me. Okay, I'm going to just boot all of you guys out for a second.
Sure.
Nobody, sure.
Right.
Exactly. Whoa. Now. Okay, now I'm back. Chaos.
I was enjoying my Jareth figure very much, but he was blocking my peripheral vision with his enormous cape, so he had to go away for a while.
But I like that Bowie's eyes are right on top of all of us.
Yeah, he's watching over us.
Yeah.
As he did in the real world.
Indeed. We planned this panel to do a quarantine panel several weeks ago, and just today they released news about new unreleased stuff coming from David Bowie. So I would like to say you're welcome on behalf of the Classics Track.
Once again, we lead the path.
Exactly. Yeah. But on his birthday in January, they're releasing covers that he did of a John Lennon song and a Bob Dylan song. And pretty excited about that stuff.
Yeah, and that most likely means we'll get something in January and then I think in April, because it's to the point now where Record Store Day, at least in England, there's always a Bowie something. So I'm guessing we're going to get at least 3 to 5 new things. And we got the Morrissey. We have the Cosmic Dancer cover, too, that's out. Morrissey, when he was on tour in LA, I think in '94, Morrissey opened for him. And they did, before Morrissey was a fascist. And
he was always a twat.
Yeah, they did they did a cover of Cosmic Dancer, and they've released that kind of as a one-off now. So that's out there too. So
that's awesome. Let's talk about your favorite. Let's go to Tom since he's displaying that album. Let's talk about your favorite album. Is that it, Tom, or is that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Young Americans, I think, is the beginning of his greatest creative period, but I think it's his most. I mean, it's most accessible. I think in overall, it's interesting. It's the album he wanted to record in Philadelphia. It's got. I mean, he's got John Lennon on it. I mean, he's got David Sanborn on it. He's got Carlos Alomar working on him. I mean, he's got Luther Vandross on backup. I mean, it's such a fascinating who all worked on this record. It's the album that I think it's his first number one hit was from this record. And I think it's probably one of the things he's most proud of too. I mean, every interview he always talked about the period he was most satisfied with was from this point through Heroes, and even though he can't remember working on station that much. This he has such clear memories of, and there's so much documentation with the recording sessions of it. I mean, it was because he was one of the biggest rock stars, period, and then he suddenly decides he's going to do this and strip down, drop all the makeup, the characters. It's Bowie himself in a way more than anything else. This is not a story album. This is a rock album.
Let's go to Rob. Can you pick one album? Do you have one favorite?
God, this is the question that I knew was going to come up, so I spent the last 2 days trying to figure this out. It does almost depend on the day, the week, and the circumstances. But I have to say that I've always been a fan of Bowie in Berlin, and I have to say that sort of this weird esoteric bubble time that we're living in right now really fits that minimalism really well. So I still love Low. I love Low to death. I'm weird in that I really love it. But lately I've been listening to a lot of Station to Station. So if you were to ask me probably my favorite in general, I'm going to say Low or Heroes. Probably I'll just go with Low so we pick one and we're done. And that's it. Otherwise, I'll never shut up. So yes, Low.
Gary.
Is it cheating to say Sound and Vision?
No, well played. No. Well played.
Thank you. I mean, it's a wonderful compilation of everything. I remember when a friend of mine who was a huge audiophile, Andrew Greason. Hi, Andrew, if you're watching. He was one of the early adopters of CDs in my friends group. And I remember, and he's a huge Bowie fan. I remember when that dropped and the amount of money he dropped on that to get it. And it's just, it does feel like cheating because it is a compilation, but I think that Bowie as an artist, so much the visuals and the music, getting the videos, getting the songs, getting the way he kind of played with them. It's a wonderful collection. I was going to say, if you only buy one, which if you're only going to do that if you're an idiot, if you're only going to buy one Bowie thing, get that. It gives you a good wide selection.
Yeah, indeed. Beth, do you have a favorite?
See, I also was afraid this was going to come up, and I spent all day going through my Spotify list of all my David Bowie songs, and I can't pick a song. I can't pick a particular album necessarily because he's done, like Rob said, it's dependent upon the day of the week or the mood I'm in, because he's done rock, he's done pop, he's done glam, he's done alternative music, he's done industrial music, he's done everything. There is a David Bowie for every mood. So just to give my no, but I've never been in a country mood, so it works out for me.
That's like
if I have to get nailed down to one, I'll just take the obvious one and pick Ziggy Stardust, just because it's great.
Do you have a this is why I made you guys answer the question first, because I don't really have an answer myself. The very first album of his that I heard was Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and I found it in like most of my early nerdy things. My uncle had a big, giant console in the living room, and he had his stack of albums, and I flipped through it, and that just looked super weird, and I thought, that's for me, and it was. But yeah, I wore the grooves off of that. But later, when he got into the 80s, like you said, Rob, with Let's Dance, it was like, oh, that guy's back and doing cool stuff again. And yeah, I loved his 80s stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is a thing we kind of have to talk about, is the fact that he did cross so many genres. He was so willing to go in a completely different direction. So many musicians, like, I love AC/DC, but they've made the same album 50 times. Mm-hmm. I love Motorhead, but they made the same album 30 times. David Bowie will always go in a new direction, and there are a lot of artists that will try that and fall on their face. And I can't think of a single place where you could say he failed. Maybe he didn't hit exactly where he wanted, but he didn't fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he went techno in like the 90s, it wasn't successful in America, but in Europe, and that's the thing. He never really cared what audience specifically liked him, just that he had an audience.
It seems like in Europe, the music-wise, the 80s never ended. And I'm totally down with that. I am okay with that 100%.
And I think it's interesting, too, that what people perceived as missteps, like that the drum and bass record, for example, and some of the other stuff in the 90s that people kind of dismissed then, now they're going back and they're like, oh, we get it. So yeah. I think with Bowie, it's kind of really hard to say to scrap anything. This is terrible until you wait 10 years for, but it's interesting that he had so many projects that people just the light went on later, and you listen to those, Outside, Heathen, and those albums kind of now, and they've kind of undergone a renaissance a little bit since his death, which I think is interesting. Like Earthling, I didn't really dig back into Earthling again until the David Bowie Is exhibition, and I'm like, I forgot how great of a record this was. So there is that.
Well, let's talk about his acting stuff. Let's talk about Labyrinth. I think that's the big one. Unless y'all disagree, I think Labyrinth is the one that people remember more than, and it's the only one there as Beth showed us, the only one that has action figures. So,
well, there's no
give
action figures.
I don't know. Give NECA time. I'm sure we'll get the Hunger figures.
I
think I have seen a Man Who Fell to Earth, statue a few times.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah,
it's all coming. It's all coming, and I'm ready for it. But yeah, I want a Ziggy Stardust figure, for goodness sake. But yeah, Labyrinth. Beth, tell us about going to see Labyrinth, and tell us about your experience with that.
I don't remember every single detail because when I was 11 or 12 was a very, very long time ago. But I immediately made my mother go out and take me to get the soundtrack. I still own the soundtrack. I had it on cassette, and then I had it on CD, and now it's on my Spotify. Nice. There is still some fantastic songs on that soundtrack. It's funny, it's sweet, and it's not even occurring to you as a child that he's 40 years old and hating on a 16-year-old, which is freaking creepy, but it's not, because in the movie context, it doesn't feel creepy at all. It just feels magical. It also opened me up to a lifetime love affair with the artwork of Brian Froud, which I'd already seen, of course, in like The Dark Crystal, but seeing more of it and seeing it again, I was like, I need to know who this is. So now I have several of his art books. And then I think I just went in wholeheartedly into David Bowie after that. I was like, I need more of whoever this guy is. And I felt like some of his mid-'80s stuff maybe wasn't as... I mean, it was pop, it was catchy, but it wasn't to me his best work. And I was all into dance music in the late to mid 90s. So Earthling and all that stuff was right up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
But Labyrinth really kind of opened me up to loving many, many things from then on and to this day.
Gary, what about you? And did you see Labyrinth in the theater?
I did not see it in the theater, but I remember the advertising for it and wanting to see it desperately. I remember when it finally hit cable, watching it over and over again.
Yeah,
and I did finally get to see it in the theater on a re-release, and it's amazing. It's, I mean, even on a regular TV screen, the movie is captivating. Henson's Muppetry work is top of the world. I had like a lot of people, a huge crush on Jennifer Connelly because of this movie, and on, you know, and everybody has a crush on Bowie. I'm sorry, but
no, you did.
And the main, one of the other things I remember is I got to go to this when I was living out in Seattle. I went to the Science Fiction Museum and Hall of Fame when they had a Labyrinth exhibit, and they had the Jareth costume with the riding crop. And I was just remember being blown away at how tiny David Bowie is. I mean, he's like, mind you, the codpiece is, I mean, you can't talk about that movie without talking about that codpiece.
Fear the pants.
Yes. I love the fact that there's actually a group dedicated to the area, as they call it.
Tom.
Yeah, we, as I mentioned earlier, we covered this on my podcast, the Good, Bad, Nerdy podcast, a few weeks ago. It's one of the things I love is he just fits in this, the way the movie's set, the way he's kind of the way he uses his eyes. He doesn't really talk that much when you think about it. It's almost like a silent performance in many ways. You know, when he speaks, it's very direct. It's very specific. When he sings, it's very, you know, important for the plot line. It's a very restrained performance too, which I give him. I mean, he could have gone over the top, and I think that's a credit to both Henson, the script. I mean, if you've read about the script, it went through multiple rewrites. They were constantly trying to adjust stuff as they realized, we can't make this work. This won't work this way. So I give credit to Bowie. He actually was one of the last people to come on the project, and for him to have such a triumph as a performer in it is real credit to him. But also, I always say when you talk about that, you have to talk about how great Henson was in making that film work.
Oh yeah,
of course. Rob.
So I saw it. Like a lot of people my age, I didn't actually see it the first run through on a theater. So I saw it, later on cable. But I was lucky enough in the '90s when I was in New York. It was interesting because I saw it at a theater in Times Square back when Times Square was like Times Square, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. It was gritty. It was like everything you expect it to be, And when you see it in a theater, it's a totally different. I mean, it's great, but it's a totally different experience in the dark of a theater, right? And one of the things that really jumped out at me when I saw it on a theater that I missed seeing it on a smaller screen was that I knew how much he followed Kabuki, and I knew how much like that sort of theater really fascinated him, but he really uses it a lot in Labyrinth, and it really works. I think that he looked at this and said, I just need to walk out on stage. I don't need to do anything. I mean, really, he's not really, he's one of those few people that could just sort of say, I'm not really acting. I'm David Bowie. It's just that's kind of what it is. Yep. And he's great in an ensemble piece too. The thing that I think he doesn't get credit for with Labyrinth is in an ensemble piece like Labyrinth, it's very easy for him, or it could have been very easy for him to overwhelm everyone else around him. Yeah. And he sort of fit into the bookshelf very well, as and I think that is really something that people don't credit him for. They always say, "Oh, Labyrinth, it's a Bowie movie." It's like it's so much more,
There are all so many solid characters that are some of my favorites. Like Sir Didymus is just such a fantastic character, and I love him. And so many of my role-playing game characters are sort of based on him at their core of the whole, I can do this. No, you're a small dog. You realize that? No, I can do this.
He's the one I really, really want to figure of, but the only ones I can find are so expensive.
Yeah. The details are insane.
Yeah.
Now, I would.
Puppetry Arts actually has Sir Didymus, and I got my picture with him, and I'm very happy about that. You were going to say something. I'm sorry.
I was going to say
for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to go there. Cheap plug. Tom.
Yeah. Also for acting, I always praise. If you've not seen it, watch The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's such a fascinating. It's a pre-Star Wars science fiction film. It's a 70s movie, if you ever could talk about a 70s film. It's dark. It's very esoteric. It's the movie he was working on when he was making Station to Station. That was supposed to be the soundtrack, but decided not to use it. And his performance is so unique, and it's the perfect use of Bowie of that time period. We need someone to be a bizarre alien who's very kind of distracted and confused about this world, but also has a secret plan. You can't find anyone else besides David Bowie for that part. And it was like perfect casting. And I've always wondered if his music had been used, would the movie have had a different impact? It's such a kind of muted film, but I think that also works for what they were going for too. That was the case. I saw that in college. I was like, wow, this is such a carefully budgeted film too. They don't go for crazy special effects. It's way more like it's a thinking sci-fi movie, which in the 70s there was a period of time where a lot more sci-fi was was more in the dialogue and the concepts than it was the spectacle. Because and then post Star Wars that kind of high concept sci-fi kind of got felled alongside for quite a long time.
I was actually that was the next thing I was going to talk about was The Man Who Fell to Earth. It was nominated for a Hugo, which that doesn't happen for things, but there it was, and I regret to say that I have not seen it, but I've heard things.
It's good, but
performance with it.
Yeah, and again, it makes really good use of the fact that Bowie could do otherworldly without any problem whatsoever. That's why he works as Jareth. That's why he works in The Hunger. It's why he works in that movie. Is there's just that guy's definitely more than human.
Yeah. If you listen to Golden Years and you watch a certain sequence, you can kind of see where it was supposed to be used. And it's that whole album is The Thin White Duke. It's almost they were supposed to be kind of released together. They weren't. And if they'd been, used to combine, it would have been a fascinating project. I've always said that's like the greatest thing Bowie didn't remember he did. I mean, he used to say every time he didn't remember any of it. He was so high on cocaine. Marriage was falling apart. He was so stuck in the LA party scene. That was the Hollywood vampire period for him. It's completely blacked out of his mind. He doesn't remember. He never remembered what he was working on, why he was making Nazi references, why any of that stuff. It's so weird when you read about what he was doing during the Thin White Duke period, and you realize he doesn't remember it either. He had to go to Berlin to get it out of his system.
Yeah.
Rob, Man Who Fell to Earth.
I didn't really get into that until I was young, so I didn't. In real time, I was like, I knew it existed, but when they did the reissue for it, when it was a couple of years ago, is when I really sort of delved into it. And you really got a clean copy too. It wasn't like late night theater glitchy.
Right.
Yeah. When you see a really clean copy of it, and if you're a fan of science, I mean, it's interesting to see the Man Who Fell to Earth as like a fan of just weird movies, but then it's another thing to see it as someone who likes science fiction. Which gives it a whole sort of, like everything else of his, it's got layers. I like it. I like it more with the passage of time, and I think I get it more than I did the first two times I saw it. I'm curious to see.
There's very Andy Warhol theme to it.
It was the 70s.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's 70s period. Yeah.
And as a child of the 80s, it took me a long time to really look at the 70s and go, Okay. But no, really. I mean,
No, I agree.
But I think, I'm curious to see how much this new TV series they're doing of it takes from that, from The Man Who Fell to Earth. But in many ways, it's such an antithesis from Labyrinth too. I mean, I know they're years apart, but it's so interesting that the same person is in both those films, which I think is incredibly fascinating.
He is. Yeah. I think his choices of things are so, like you said, esoteric and bizarre. Like, he could have had a totally full career just doing movies and done music at the same time. I mean, people have done that, but the fact that he chose only this handful of things to be in, and they're all so memorable, and some of them not just because of him. And on that note, what about the Hunger?
On that note, Tom?
Yeah, I got to drop out, but thanks for letting me be on here. And before I go, I got to plug my podcast, Good, Bad, and Nerdy podcast, starting on Saturday. And we're starting a special 12-day marathon. We're calling it the 12 Days of Star Wars.
Nice.
Every day, an episode. We're going to talk about a specific Star Wars movie, going through all of the movies. And for the 12th day, we're going to be talking about certain holiday special. So yeah, if you're looking to pick up something, because I know a lot of podcasts are taking breaks for Christmas, please look us up.
Losers, punks. Watch out.
Bad and the Nerdy Movie podcast. You can find us on Apple and all other major platforms. So please hit us up, and that'll be debuting starting on Saturday, every day for 12 days.
Cool deal.
Thanks, guys.
Well, we will. You're welcome. We will have links to Tom's stuff in our show notes, and meanwhile, the Hunger. And again, I haven't seen this one either. And I feel terrible.
Oh,
that's it, Joe. We're flogging you.
It's the convenience. It's the convergence of Bauhaus and David Bowie. What more do you want?
Yeah.
Tee up, Beth.
Well, I was going to say the fun thing about The Hunger to me now is that Bauhaus went on to do a really fantastic cover of Ziggy Stardust.
Mm-hmm.
So very cool that they link up together in this movie. But I definitely saw this movie well after I'd seen Labyrinth. My parents were permissive about the number of people I saw die. But if it was anything sexy, that was off limits. So I was probably 16 or 17 when I saw The Hunger, and I went, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, please. Please, more of this. Because Catherine Deneuve is gorgeous. And David Bowie is, I could definitely buy myself being seduced to being a vampire from him. More so than any of those damn Lost Boys.
I gotta say, I gotta say, in The Hunger, I'm like, okay, I get it. Vampire, that doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, there are basically two strands of vampires in the 80s, and it's either the Lost Boys punk group, or it's the Bauhaus, or it's the Hunger, goth, very sexy. You pretty much either go in either direction. And I remember when I watched The Hunger because Bowie was in it, and I liked vampire movies, and so yeah, it still holds up. It's a great performance.
And I think the important thing about The Hunger is you take The Hunger and Labyrinth, and somewhere you have the Sandman.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to Chad, who said this 3 times, I think now. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a fantastic movie.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Let me guess, Joe, you haven't seen it.
That needs a reissue. Has there been a reissue of that? I don't.
Okay, I'll back Joe up on this. I haven't seen it either.
Okay, good. That's one.
I only really became familiar with it through the David Bowie Is exhibition. That's the only reason I know about it, and I've been utterly fascinated by it. And I've seen I probably have seen it all in clips, but not cohesively as one thing. I've probably seen like an hour of it, but it needs a proper reissue. But I don't know the conditions of it or anything, but really, if there's, at this point, if you have a David Bowie property anywhere that, you want to remaster it and put it out at this point.
I believe Chad says it's on a Criterion Blu-ray already.
Oh, there we go. Because I did not see it at the Criterion sale when I was looking through, so that's on me.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't think of looking for it, so that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is a wonderful movie. It's a very heavy drama. It's a British war film, Japanese prisoners of war. It's not a light, fluffy movie.
Now, one thing I legit did see him in for once was his role in the Twin Peaks movie Firewalk with Me.
Yes, he was supposed to be in the sequel series that came out, but unfortunately he passed before that came out. It was very upsetting.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things he wanted to. Yeah,
I feel like I wanted to. Of course, I still could. Anybody still could. I feel like I want to read 70s Doctor Strange comics and listen to Bowie at the same time from the 70s, because I think that would match up. But the Twin Peaks show, as soon as I saw David Bowie on it, well, of course, perfect. Why wasn't he on this already? Because that was the perfect show for him. Yeah. And I just dug it. But in seeing him in Firewalk with Me, I was like, well, that's David Bowie. It wasn't like, I thought, well, that's an interesting character. It was like, no, that's David Bowie.
Yeah. Well, his otherworldliness fits that Lynchian worldview, mindset, whatever you want to call it, where he just is like, oh, of course he's part of this.
Well, once you see him in it, you're like, wait, why wasn't he in every David Lynch movie? Because that is the perfect place for him.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we got Kyle MacLachlan. Yeah, but he's not Bowie.
He's not Bowie. I feel like I wish he had been in the Doctor Strange movie. That would have been great. But yeah, there's like you said, Rob, there's so much that he. Luckily, there's so much of his that we have.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to give a shout out too. It's not on the huge list of things people love him in, but his Andy Warhol and Basquiat is great. It's just kind of like, you're watching David Bowie, but it's also Andy Warhol. It's literally two things at once, and he's great in that. He and God bless Jeffrey Wright. He goes toe to toe with him, but he's great in Basquiat too.
There's so much good stuff. If you were recommending Bowie to someone who had never heard him or seen him, what would you pick?
Musically or movie wise?
Let's say musically first. That's tough. I get that. I would, and I think maybe saying Sound and Vision is cheating, but I might. Gary beat me to it, but his what was the Let's Dance album for me would be. But with Bowie, you can't. Maybe I should retract the question, because with Bowie, you can't really do that.
It would. I was gonna say it would have to depend on who you're talking to, because there's a Bowie album, like we said, except for country fans. There's a Bowie album for every genre fan. It's like, oh, you're into 80s pop. Here's Let's Dance. Oh, you're into gothy stuff. Here's Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
If you're into.
If you like musicals, here's Absolute Beginners.
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Here's Under Pressure if you just like music.
I was going to bring that up because that album, or that song rather, I found years after it came out, and I confess I found out about that song because of a little song called Ice Ice Baby. Unfortunately, I heard Ice Ice Baby first, And then when one of my nerd friends goes, that's a cover of they're using the music from, and then it turns out, well, Under Pressure may be the best song, like of all of them.
Ever.
Everything else is second. Under Pressure is great, and it's the perfect combo. David Bowie and Queen. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I can't tell you what it was like to be alive in the 90s listening to radio and you hear dun 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 dun. You're like, oh, Under Pressure, you crank it up, and then it's like Ice Ice Baby, and you're like, damn it, you turn it back down.
Super disappointing every single time.
And even when you think, oh, there's no way it's Under Pressure. Of course it's Ice Ice Baby. And then when it actually is Ice Ice Baby, you're like, oh, couldn't it have been Under Pressure that one?
Oh, another comment from Chad there. He saw the Bowie and 9 Inch Nails tour, and a friend turned to him and asked him why they were playing Ice Ice Baby.
Oh,
and that's when you hit your friend, right?
Oh, that's when you remove your friend.
I remember there was a juice bar we all used to go to when I was young, because it was like they'd play videos and bands played and stuff, and they showed the video for Dancing in the Streets with him and Mick Jagger. And I think that sort of, had he not done Under Pressure, that'd be the other thing they remember him for.
Yeah.
And I just kind of remember for the longest time, like going, why isn't there a video for Under Pressure? And then I'm like, oh, because, why don't I see this? Why isn't Under Pressure? And it's because of the different ways they did radio marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
But that record, I think, sort of has a timelessness to it that no one expected. To it,
it's not even really on. It's not on any of Bowie's things, except I'm sure it's on one of his greatest hits thing. But I think it has to be on one of. I think it's on one of Queen's greatest hits albums.
Yeah, it was. I think it was considered a Queen with David Bowie song when it was released. So, yeah. but
the song is so good. And I highly recommend. I am very excited about this. I saw a giant clown sing it live. I saw Puddles.
Oh, you saw Puddles do it.
Puddles Pity Party. He covered Under Pressure, and it was great.
Oh, that had to be good.
And there's a video on Puddles' YouTube page of his performance of it. But it's I thought, oh my gosh, he's singing Under Pressure. Or of course, now when it started, I thought, hey, is he doing Ice Ice Baby? I bet this is going to be good. Turns out, no, he's doing the original. So, good stuff.
Now, Beth, you had a story you wanted to tell, if I remember correctly.
I saw David Bowie 3 times, and one of those times was the tour with 9 Inch Nails. And one of those times was at the International Ballroom, which, if you're not from Atlanta in the past, it was a smaller venue, like less than 1,000 people, maybe 500. I don't know. It was pretty packed. That was on the Outside tour, the Earthling tour. But then also during the Earthling tour, he did a small round of shows where it was just him and Reeves with 2 guitars. And here they played at Smith's Old Bar. Wow. And anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's like a 200-person max venue. Oh. And it was breakfast with Bowie. And I'd been trying to win tickets all week on the radio. Just every single time they'd call for tickets, I would just be on the phone instantly. So no luck. Finally, I'm waiting tables at the time, so I'm getting off at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm on my way home, and they're on the radio saying, oh, well, if you didn't get tickets, show up at Smith's Old Bar at 5 a.m., and we're going to have a raffle. So I got home, woke my husband up. Well, not my husband at the time, just my boyfriend at the time. Woke him up and said, hey, get your ass out of bed. We're going to see David Bowie this morning. So then we started cranking full of coffee. In order to stay awake, just went ahead and went down to Smith's Old Bar at like 3 a.m. and just stood around. There was us and like 2 other couples standing there. So once finally by the time the bar finally opens, there's like 50 people outside. So we just run and grab a table with this other couple and start putting our names into that drop box as many times as we could, because there was nobody from the station there saying one entry per person.
Nice.
Right.
So we were just shoving our names into the boxes right, left, and sideways. So the couple we're sitting with, they win tickets, or the girl wins tickets. Then the guy's name gets called, and he says, "Oh, no, I can't go up there. They know that we're together." So they send my husband up. And my husband is unable to answer complicated questions like, "What is your name and where do you live?" because he's not that guy. So then the DJ starts screaming at us and threaten to kick us out until I finally go pull I guess, proto-Karen, because I was way too young to Karen at that point. So I proto-Karened all over the station manager about how if you'd wanted us to know the rules, you would have had somebody here with this box when you opened the bar. So she ends up giving our table of 4 people 3 passes.
Mm.
And my husband is nice enough to say, "You know what? You dragged me down here. You're the one who loves David Bowie. Take the pass and go upstairs." So then I got to go to Shangri-La.
Oh,
I felt bad about it, but
for like a
But not
minute.
bad enough not to go.
No. not bad.
no. What am I going to do? Sit downstairs with my husband? He wasn't even my husband at that point. He was still just my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I get upstairs, and there's Noel with another friend of ours who'd won the tickets on the radio. And I'm like, "You asshole, you should have called. You gave Noel a ticket?" It was the most amazing experience of my life, though. I can't really tell you much about it because I was so insane from having stayed up all night and blown away by the experience. But if Earthling is not your cup of tea, search out
It's so good.
the acoustic versions of 7 Years in Tibet and Dead Man Walking, and they will become 2 of your favorite songs.
Do you guys have that? That is Beth. That is awesome. Thank you.
I'm sure it painted me to be a terrible wife, but whatever.
Well, you weren't even a wife at that time. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
What about let's see. What have we not really talked about? I think I first saw Bowie in. I never got to see him in concert. When he was on Saturday Night Live at some point. I just thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. This dude is awesome. And because at that time, mid 80s, all videos weren't concert videos anymore. It was all acting and that kind of thing. But outside of, like, I'd never seen him perform until I saw him on Saturday Night Live. And I thought, well, this dude is amazing. And everything he did was differently amazing. What effect did he have on everybody else, do you think, on music-wise?
Well, I mean, Kurt Cobain remembers after they did The Man Who Phoned the World, on MTV, gets a phone call a couple days later, and David Bowie's like, "I really liked your version."
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. It's not, "Hey, what are you doing with my song?" Yeah, I think you just have to look around now to hear. He's everywhere in pop music. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
If you don't think there's a lineage between Little Richard to David Bowie to Lady Gaga, I can't help you.
Yeah.
I mean, he's everywhere. So musically, all tons of bands that are around now, particularly out of the UK, because pretty much when you're born in the UK, you get handed a Beatles record, a Stones record, and a Bowie record, and they say off you go. And at least now, so I think, now the hipsters get them. And it's interesting because he's one of the few people that his influence on rap, his influence on jazz. I mean, it's everywhere. He's literally
his influence on industrial.
Everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's like it's harder to pick a genre he didn't influence in some way, or he didn't pioneer.
Yeah, even classical with the Philip Glass compositions, which are more experimental than classical. But and it's interesting because if you listen to Chris Christopherson or Johnny Cash or Merle Haggard or even Waylon, they all talked about David Bowie. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these they all knew who he was.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting how he seeped into like every aspect of contemporary culture, even. And I don't know I don't know if it's because him dying made everyone sort of wake up and realize how important he is, or if it's just that it's just always been there and everybody's seen it. I kind of think it's a little of each. But I think people like us, it's always been there. But then I think to the masses.
Yeah, well, when he passed, he was ubiquitous. I mean, it was hard to imagine a world without that David Bowie aura.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in a way we kind of taken him for granted. I mean, I remember when he said, "I quit and I'm not doing anything except Tin Machine from now on. David Bowie, as you know him, is gone," which was the second time he'd said that in his career. And I remember a lot of people going, but David.
Yeah.
And, and then again you kind of have to talk about Black Star because this is an album he made knowing that it was his goodbye. And it just, when you listen to it, I remember when it dropped, I was like, this is good, but this is kind of weird. This is kind of dark. And then you watch the video for Black Star, which is all basically him saying goodbye. And then he passes and it was just like, oh.
It was hard to wrap my head around Black Star, and it could have been just because I was bummed that he had passed away, but that he left this thing for us and made it knowing. It's, gosh, what?
Don't listen to it now. It's not a pandemic record. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's I don't. I guess I don't want to be bummed out about his death. I was.
Oh yeah.
Because there's so much that it's not like he's going to be forgotten ever.
Oh.
And I love that they keep finding stuff that he did. Like, I'm super excited about the stuff that's coming in January, and Rob, like you said, more stuff.
Well, his son is very calculated. I mean, I think from what I've heard, he had a plan of what he want released when after his death. He was sort of that meticulous about his career and his legacy that he's like, this is what I want out, this is what I don't want out. Yes, yes, no, no, and the licensing and up until the end, he was pretty hands-on, and I think he had a very astute idea of what he wanted after. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're going to get albums and stuff in the next 2 or 3 years released that he specifically said, I want this released in 2024, or I want this released in 2025. I mean, he's sort of like, who thinks of that when they're, well, yeah.
Yeah. What,
sorry.
In the comments, I was just flipping through those for a second, and we didn't mention the soundtrack to Cat People.
Oh yeah.
It did he do just like the one song, or was that all his soundtrack? Did he do the whole thing? I don't know. Well, now I feel terrible.
I cannot tell you. I just remember being that.
I think he just did the one song. I think.
Okay. I just remember the movie being really freaky.
Oh sure.
Even for a late 70s, early 80s movie, it's a freaky film.
Yeah. That I remember, that part. Beth, what do you think about? Have you heard the stuff? Well, Black Star, and what about the stuff that's come out since he passed away?
I haven't heard anything besides Black Star. Black Star was tough to get through, and especially the Lazarus video. When that came out, my husband and I had both lost parents to cancer at that point, so we couldn't listen to that album or watch that video for. I don't know that we've tried to watch it again since. It's a tough thing to watch.
There are things like that when they, I'm the same way, Beth. There's things that I'm just not going to go back to, or things I never finished.
I'll go back someday, but
it's still too raw.
Yeah, and it might always be.
Yeah, and as an internet meme going around says, I'm not saying David Bowie and Prince held the universe together, but
look at what's happening.
Yeah.
And there is somewhere in Paisley Park a Bowie Prince session.
Somewhere. Oh yeah.
Oh, it's happening.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's in a race with the Beatles Elvis thing to see what's going to come out first.
Yeah. Well, what have we forgotten anything?
I'm sure we have, and people will tear us a new one.
It's one of those things that, like we say this almost every panel. We could do another hour.
You know, I love.
Yeah.
We were. My
it's like
wife
we barely touched. We haven't even mentioned Major Tom.
No, my wife and I went to England, and we have a friend of ours that has a place in Devon, and it is literally in the middle of nowhere in Devon. It's called Bristow. It's really small. It's beautiful, and our next place we were gonna go was London, and I remember it's like I gotta find something nice for us to do in London, and I remember trying to find first an internet connection, and then I kind of found a thing that had a listing of different shows, right, that were going on, and then I'm like, oh my God, the David Bowie musical. So then I called because I couldn't get anybody on the internet. So I called and from the pub across the street, and I asked the guy, can I, and I ended up getting his tickets, and that was pretty incredible. So I think sort of the stage aspect of Bowie, both as somebody who, he's working on this album, but also a play at the same time. And that soundtrack album to Lazarus is also very good. If you kind of want a sidebar of that, and I think that everyone always talks about Black Star, but I think that also is on the other sort of cap near the end too, because he came to the dress rehearsals and stuff near the end, and
Well, guys, I'm glad that we well, you know what we didn't talk about was the thing that made me and Gary think of doing this panel in the first place was his duet with Bing Crosby.
Oh yeah.
Why? That'll be a good thing to talk about at the end. Do we think Bing Crosby knew who he was when they filmed?
If you read the Gary Giddens biography on, which I highly recommend, the Gary Giddens biographies on Bing Crosby are just amazing, right? Crosby kind of like peripherally like, oh, he's the new singer, he's the new crooner.
Yeah.
But then he's like, what the hell is this guy? Because Bowie, Bing Crosby is very much Republican, very much conservative, very much out on the golf course,
the 30s and 40s, yeah.
Out on the racetracks, out on the golf course, and this guy comes in, and it was kind of weird. It was from what they say, it was like very awkward. I would love to have been there to sort of see that.
The performance itself is what's great about it. Just the video that it itself is awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 9.5 times out of 10, when you see a duet video, they're all real chummy. They know each other. They've been pals for years. They're high-fiving and smiling and everything. But in this video, it seems like Bing is going, why is this person in my house?
That's part of it. It's also kind of near the end of Bing's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there is a correlation. I think doing this duet with Bing Crosby made Bowie think when he was doing Black Star how he wanted to go out. That's just me, but I think that he kind of sees this guy who's struggling in this later part of his life to build a new audience, which Crosby's like, I'm going to build a new audience to get people to and the parents are going to listen. So it was very much sort of a meeting of the generations thing. But it was very weird because he comes in and Crosby's like, who the hell is this guy? And Bowie knows who Crosby is. He's obvious who he is, and he can't get through to him. So then he starts talking to Crosby about how he really appreciated the way he used the microphone and amplifying his voice. And then the light went on with Crosby, and they got along well enough to do the duet, and they were kind of really little slap happy afterwards, and that was just kind of it. But there's one of the great things about watching that video is it's kind of like watching a weird train wreck. It's kind of like are my uncles at the party gonna fight? It's like it is very much just odd. It's just and rhythmically when they do the weird thing where they both sing at the same time and different things, as a piece of music, it's just very odd and disorienting. You kind of have to hear it a couple times to get used to it.
Well, and isn't that what Christmas is all about? Getting different generations to sit together and maybe not punch each other in the face?
Yeah.
Maybe not punch each other.
You're going to say, Beth?
Oh, I was just going to say, from what I read, the reason it's not an actual duet was because David Bowie had put his foot down about, I am not singing Little Drummer Boy. So they wrote the part that he sang in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And just slapped it together to make him happy, because really Bowie was only doing it because his mom wanted him to sing with Bing Crosby.
Yeah. Nice. And it went to number 3 in the English charts, but he was glad to take the money when it was.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I think 92. I think in 92 it was number 3 at Christmas. Wow. Yeah. I think. I might be wrong, but
it's one of those things that is that's just an every Christmas kind of thing. A few years ago, Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly did a shot-for-shot remake of it, and the stuff they're talking about in the video, they said later, oh no, that was verbatim what they actually discussed. Like that's the whole video, and they just redid the entire thing, and it's excellent because they didn't change anything. Even the weird uncomfortableness, they managed to duplicate it.
I have to look that up right now.
It is on the YouTube mixtape that we made last week for last week's quarantine panel. It's on there somewhere.
Yeah, go back and watch.
Yeah,
when we're done here. Don't go now. Wait till
we're done. Don't go now. It's somewhere around the 50s or 60s of the 100 and something videos. Yeah. But anyway, well, while guys, thank you for coming and hanging out with us for a little while and taking your mind off of the hot garbage and the cold garbage. But Rob, where can people find you?
So I do the Weekend Justice podcast for needcoffee.com. And I also do a radio show called Juxtaposition on KDHX. It's online, kdhx.org. And I'm drawing a complete blank now. So yeah, and every once in a while, sometimes I'll do stuff for Earth Station or Station 1 or Station 2 and a couple other things. So just kind of, most of it's on needcoffee.com or on my blog, or if you just follow me on Facebook or Twitter, I'll generally send out updates.
Cool, neat. And all of the links to everybody's stuff will be in our show notes afterward. And Mr. Gary Mitchell.
You can find me here with him. So if you're here, you found me. You can find me on the Classic Track. You can find me here on the Twitter and on the Facebook under my name. And that's where you found me.
Here we are. Yeah. And Beth, where can people find you and your things?
My things are Execute Chapter 66, a Star Wars fiction podcast where we are also not taking a break for the holidays, but we are taking a break from books because on Monday we're going to be covering season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Nice.
But we are also
excited for tomorrow.
Yeah,
we are very excited. But that's why we're taking a book break, because we're about to bust into the Aftermath trilogy. So we got to get The Mandalorian out of the way first.
Cleanse the palate.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I'm about halfway through Thrawn, so I can't wait to listen to your episode when I finish it.
Oh, okay. Yes, please listen. And anytime we see something book related pop up on a TV show of Star Wars, we will be posting about it or posting links. So if you wanted to know what Operation Cinder was, check out our episode on Alphabet Squadron.
Exactly. And as Gary pointed out, you can find me here every Thursday, and probably more often than that, eventually, or right now. But every Thursday, we're going to be back here at 9 Eastern, 8 Central to do fun things like this. And we're going to, we've got ideas booked into January, but really what I'm excited about is we could just keep doing these up until hopefully we get a physical Dragon Con next fall. Yeah. But in the meantime, we'll be here and
join us next week for From Donkeys to Otters, Christmas Gets Weird.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're very excited about that. And I absolutely love coming and hanging out with you guys every week. Rob, Beth, please come back.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Gary, you're required to come back. Because
ever since he shackles me to this desk.
You signed a contract.
Well, at least you have a pretty light now.
That's true.
A pretty light. Yeah.
And I've been playing with it all podcast. And if anybody can figure out a secret meaning of the lights changing, please tell me, because I have no idea.
I was just thinking of the Picard Cardassian. There are 4 lights thing, but yeah.
But
I like your serious moonlight.
There are 5 Cthulhu's.
Now my mind is completely blown. So join us next time when Gary Mitchell will say,
"What do you feed a diamond dog? It can't be regular kibble."
Where is the inbox broadcast button? No, I love you guys. Thank you very much.